Most people think the Holocaust was driven by hatred, and it was. But hatred alone doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain the warehouses, the bookkeeping, the gold teeth, shaved hair, and labeled bundles. It doesn't explain how the same trains that brought people to their death also carried back their belongings, sorted by size and value. Behind the killing machine was another engine, just as organized, just as relentless. One built not just on ideology, but on profit. And nowhere was that system more refined than in Treblinka. By the time the victims reached Treblinka, they had already been plundered multiple times. Their homes, savings, and valuables had been confiscated during ghettoization and deportation. What they brought were remnants: clothes, food, essential items, family heirlooms, cash and jewelry sewn into hems, a gold coin pressed into a shoe sole, a ring swallowed in panic. Along the way, some tried to barter with workers by the railway. A gold watch for a drink of water. No one knew what might buy them another hour of life. Some prisoners arrived completely naked, already robbed during the journey. This angered the SS, not out of pity, but because someone else had taken what they considered theirs. As soon as the victims got off the train, the machinery of theft began. They were ordered to undress and tie their shoes together, so they'd be easier to sort later. Women were forced to lie on a special table and searched inside their bodies for hidden gems. Hair was cut short and collected for industrial use. On the way to the gas chambers, the crowd stopped at a small hut. There, they handed over their last valuables and documents, the final remnants of their identity. From that point on, they were no longer people, just a mass of naked bodies. Then the guards forced them into the gas chambers and started the diesel engine. Its exhaust pipe led directly into the sealed rooms. After 20 to 30 minutes, everyone inside fell silent. We explained the gassing process in detail in episode 3 of Treblinka Explained. The robbing of victims continued even after death. A team of prisoners combed through the corpses. Gold teeth were wrenched out with pliers. According to some testimonies, a single bucket could be filled with teeth in 2 days. Other valuables were found on the floors of the gas chambers or fell from the bodies once muscles relaxed. Even the gold swallowed by victims in a final act of desperation was eventually recovered. Months later, when the Nazis began burning the buried corpses, the gold spilled from their partly decomposed bodies. The scale of this plunder required infrastructure. Treblinka had dedicated facilities for sorting. Barracks A and B processed clothing, household goods, children's toys, spectacles, silver cigarette cases, anything of potential value. The most precious items went to the Goldjuden, a team of Jewish prisoners with backgrounds in banking or jewelry. They worked under SS officer Franz Suchomel, handling cash, gemstones, and precious metals. Paper scraps and worn-out garments were discarded, burned in the eternal flames of the Lazaret pit. But everything else was carefully bundled, labeled, and sent to Lublin, the headquarters of Operation Reinhard. There, the spoils were industrially processed. Teeth were melted into gold bars. Clothing was cleaned, relabeled, and distributed to German civilians. Treblinka alone shipped at least 1,200 train cars filled with stolen belongings. Some survivors estimated as many as 1,500. If placed end to end, the train would have stretched nearly 10 miles. And yet, only a fraction of that property made it to its official destination. Much of the camp's wealth disappeared before ever reaching Lublin. Theft began immediately, and nearly everyone was complicit. According to some estimates, 2/3 of the valuables vanished during the initial sorting, before they even reached the Goldjuden. And even in their workspace, the looting continued. SS and Ukrainian guards came in like customers at a bank, helping themselves to the most valuable pieces. Exact numbers are unknown, but it's likely that less than 1/5 of the stolen property actually reached Lublin. The same applied to clothing. SS men treated the sorting barracks like a private marketplace. They knew the sorters by name and asked them to find specific items: Persian coats, luxury lingerie for their wives. More clothing was stolen en route to Lublin. Eddie Weinstein, who escaped Treblinka hidden inside a clothing train, described how, during a stop along the way, Polish railway workers opened the cars to steal. They took whatever they could. Evidently, the Germans had serious rivals for the property they had looted, Weinstein noted. You can learn more about the brave escapes from Treblinka in Episode 5. The motivation to steal varied. Prisoners stole to survive. Ukrainian and German guards, mostly out of greed. There was an entire economy operating inside the camp's fences. Among the most active participants were members of the Tarnungskommando, a camouflage squad allowed to leave the camp frequently. Survivor Richard Glaser described how they hid money under their armpits, in boots, belts, or even mouths. In the forest, they exchanged these valuables with Ukrainian guards for food, supplies the guards had bought in nearby villages. Gold coins were the most valuable. Then came US dollars, rubles, and finally Polish zlotys, which were actually necessary for purchases in occupied Poland. Food, medicine, and even alcohol were smuggled into the camp. Some prisoners managed to get white bread, sausages, citrus fruits, life-saving commodities in the midst of typhus outbreaks. The prices for smuggled food vary across different testimonies. They depended on how much was brought into the camp that day, but generally, you had to pay at least 10 times the price you'd pay in an American grocery store. As Yankiel Wiernik wrote, the Ukrainians went wild at the sight of gold. They often didn't understand its actual value, but they craved it all the same. Prostitutes traveled from as far as Warsaw, hoping to trade sex for coins, food, or other stolen goods. The Ukrainian guards, flush with loot but clueless about prices, became easy targets and regular customers. The SS had a double-faced attitude toward this so-called speculation. Officially, they tried to suppress it because it diverted property from the Reich. If a prisoner was caught with valuables during a random inspection, he was whipped and executed at the lazaret. The same punishment applied to those who stole even a single potato from the kitchen. The master of such surprise inspections was executioner August Miette, known as the Angel of Death from the lazaret. And yet, the SS themselves were eager to buy extra food on the black market. The camp kitchen provided only basic military rations. Survivor Samuel Willenberg noted that the Germans, for instance, never searched the Tarnungskommando upon their return from the forest, because they received a share of the smuggled goods. Even when they came back under the watchful eye of the feared Miette, he let them pass with their contraband as usual. Different SS men reacted to the smuggling economy in different ways. Some seemed relatively honest and tried to stop the theft. Others went on leave carrying suitcases stuffed with stolen goods. Some simply looked the other way. The already mentioned August Miette used his loot from Treblinka to build himself a house in Germany. Corrupt SS men held each other in check. Even when someone was incompetent, like the drunkard Saido, who often overslept and missed morning roll call, others were afraid to report him. He might expose what was really happening inside the camp. But the thefts at Treblinka weren't caused solely by Franz Suchomel and his lax oversight of the Goldjuden. the problem ran deeper. Some historians believe Christian Wirth, the inspector of Operation Reinhard, allowed the chaos on purpose. By placing the camp under the inept leadership of Dr. Eberl in the early weeks, Wirth may have created a smokescreen, one that allowed valuables to be funneled not to Lublin, but directly to Berlin. According to one account, he bypassed his superior Globocnik altogether and sent treasure straight to the Reich Chancellery. That would make the naming of Operation Reinhard even more revealing. While most historians connect it to Reinhard Heydrich, some believe it referred instead to Fritz Reinhard, a finance official who oversaw the seizure of Jewish property. If that version is true, the name was never just an ideological tribute. It was a nod to theft. As 1943 drew to a close, Treblinka was wiped from the map. The buildings were dismantled, the ground flattened, crops planted, a fake farm established. A Ukrainian guard and his family lived there, not to grow food, but to keep looters away. Because Treblinka had become infamous, a graveyard rumored to still contain gold. When the Red Army approached, the fake farmer fled. Locals overran the site, digging and scavenging. The Soviets arrived to find no farm, no buildings, just a churned-up plain. The soil turned inside out. Human bones and clumps of hair scattered across the ground. Treblinka was not only a killing center, it was a financial operation. It looted the dead, paid off the living, and corrupted everyone in its orbit. Even in genocide, there was a bottom line. It wasn't just hatred that fueled Treblinka. It was profit. Our next episode looks at the so-called culture inside Treblinka, and the many ways the SS used it to humiliate and dehumanize their victims.